The gate crashed open before the security guard could even reach it. A black Range Rover rolled into the compound, tires crunching over gravel, and the whole street seemed to hold its breath. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains. Children stopped playing football in the road. Mom Ngozi, who had lived next door for over 20 years, dropped the basin of clothes she was carrying. Because everyone knew that car didn't belong on the street. The driver's door opened first. Then the back door. A woman stepped out in a cream-colored dress, sunglasses perched on her head, a leather bag over her shoulder that probably cost more than the house behind her. Daniel Okafor stood frozen in his doorway, a cup of tea shaking in his hand. "Adaeze," he whispered, as if saying her name too loudly might make her disappear again, the way she had disappeared 11 years ago. She didn't answer right away. She simply looked at him, really looked, the way a person looks at a photograph they haven't seen in a long time, searching for what's changed and what hasn't. "Hello, Papa," she finally said. But she hadn't come back for the reason he feared. She had come back with something no one in that compound could have predicted. To understand why Adaeze Okafor stood in front of that gate with the kind of composure only pain can build, we have to go back to the beginning, to the day her mother died and her father chose silence over love. Adaeze was only 7 when her mother passed away, giving birth to a baby who did not survive either. Grief swallowed the house whole. Daniel, who had once been a warm and playful father, retreated into himself, working longer hours, speaking less, laughing never. 2 years later, he remarried. Her name was Florence, a woman with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes, the kind of smile that never reached past her lips. From the very first day, Florence made her position clear. "This is my house now," she told a 9-year-old Adaeze. "You will learn to respect that." Daniel said nothing. He never said anything. And in his silence, Florence found permission. Adaeze was moved out of her old room and into a small store beside the kitchen. She was given chores far beyond her age, scrubbing floors before school, washing plates for a household of 5, ironing clothes that weren't hers. When Florence gave birth to 2 children of her own, the gap widened even further. Adaeze watched from the doorway as her father carried his new son on his shoulders, laughing the laugh she remembered from before, a laugh she no longer received. "Papa, can I come too?" she asked once when he took the younger children to the park. "Next time," he said, not looking at her. There was never a next time. At school, she buried herself in books because books didn't ask her to be smaller. She was quiet, careful, and endured. She told herself that if she worked hard enough, if she stayed patient enough, one day her father would remember that she was his daughter too. She was wrong. The day everything broke came when she was 16. Florence's youngest son fell sick with a fever, and in the chaos of the household, blame needed somewhere to land. She didn't watch him properly. Florence screamed at Daniel that night, though Adaeze had been at school the entire afternoon. "This girl brings nothing but trouble into this house. Ever since she came, nothing has gone right for us." "That's not true," Adaeze said quietly from the hallway. "I wasn't even home." "Are you calling me a liar?" Florence's voice rose to a pitch that silenced the whole street. "In my own house?" Daniel stood between them, and for one desperate second, Adaeze believed he would finally speak up for her. He didn't. "Just apologize to her," he muttered instead. "Please, Adaeze. For peace." Something in her chest cracked at those words. Not because of Florence's accusation, she had absorbed worse, but because of her father's silence. Again. Always his silence. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Florence came to the small storeroom where Adaeze slept and threw a black nylon bag onto the floor. "Pack your things," she said. "Your father agrees. This house has no more room for you." "Papa said this?" Adaeze's voice cracked. Florence didn't answer. She simply stood there, arms crossed, until Adaeze understood that no answer was the answer. She packed the few clothes she owned with shaking hands. When she stepped out into the parlor, her father was sitting on the sofa, staring at the television, though it wasn't even switched on. "Papa," she said, "are you really sending me away?" He rubbed his face with both hands. "It's for the best, Adaeze. Things will be calmer this way." "Calmer for who?" He didn't answer that either. He didn't answer that either. She walked out of the gate at 16 years old with one bag and no plan, and behind her, the door closed with a sound she would hear in her nightmares for years. The city swallowed her whole that first night. She slept at a bus terminal, curled into a corner with her bag as a pillow, flinching at every footstep. By the second week, she had learned which church compounds allowed strangers to sleep in the yard, which market women would give her leftover bread if she helped sweep their stalls, and which men to avoid entirely. Hunger became a constant companion. She sold sachet water in traffic, her voice hoarse from shouting pure water through car windows for hours under the sun. She was cheated more times than she could count, customers who drove off without paying, employers who promised wages and vanished. But she kept going, because the alternative was to lie down and let the streets finish what her family had started. It was Mr. Ease, an old baker with flour permanently dusted into the creases of his hands, who first noticed her. "You," he said one afternoon, watching her count coins with more discipline than most adults he knew. "You always give correct change, even when customers don't check." "I don't like to cheat people," Adaeze said simply. "Even if they might cheat me." Something about that answer stayed with him. A week later, he offered her a cleaning job at his bakery. "It's not much," he warned. "Floors, trays, deliveries. It's everything," she told him, and meant it. She scrubbed those floors like her life depended on it, because in many ways it did. But she didn't just clean, she watched. She watched the way Mr. Ease folded dough, the way he measured yeast, the way he knew, just by smell, when bread was close to ready. "Why do you watch so much?" one of the other workers teased her. "Because watching is free," Adaeze said. "And one day, I want to know everything he knows." Mr. Ease overheard that. From then on, he began teaching her quietly, patiently, in the hours after closing when the shop was empty and the ovens still held their warmth. "Flour is honest," he told her once. "It will show you exactly what you put into it. No more, no less." Unlike people, she absorbed every lesson like dry earth absorbing rain. Years passed. She saved every naira she could, denying herself new clothes, new shoes, anything beyond survival, because she had a plan now, and the plan was bigger than survival. "What if you stopped working for me?" Mr. Ease asked one evening, watching her shape a perfect batch of dinner rolls, and started working for yourself. The question terrified her and thrilled her in equal measure. She rented a small roadside kiosk with her savings, barely large enough to stand in. The first months were brutal. Customers ignored her. A storm once destroyed half her ingredients overnight, and she cried into her hands in the wreckage, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. "You cried yesterday," Mr. Ease told her when she showed up anyway the next morning. "Today you're back." That's the only difference between people who make it and people who don't. She kept improving her recipes, meat pies with a flakiness people talked about for days, sweet bread that regulars began requesting by name, small kindnesses like remembering a customer's birthday or their child's favorite snack. Slowly, painfully, a queue began to form outside her tiny kiosk. One afternoon, a woman in an expensive blazer stopped to taste one of her meat pies out of curiosity. Her name was Ngozi Adeyemi, head of purchasing for a regional supermarket chain. "This is remarkable," she said, genuinely surprised. "Have you ever thought about supplying somewhere bigger?" "Every single day," Adaeze admitted. But the road to that opportunity was its own war. Certification requirements she didn't understand. Loan applications rejected because she had no collateral. Equipment costs that made her stomach turn. Inspectors who found fault after fault, forcing her back to the drawing board again and again. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she confided in Mr. Ease one night, exhausted. "You've survived worse than paperwork," he reminded her gently. "You survived a locked gate at 16. This is just a different kind of gate." She pushed through. Months of sleepless nights, of tears in bathroom stalls, of nearly giving up and choosing not to, and finally, her products sat on supermarket shelves under a small hand-drawn logo she designed herself, Adaeze Table. Demand exceeded anything she imagined. She hired her first employee, then 5, then 20. She opened a real production kitchen. Her name began appearing in local business features, then national ones. Reporters asked about her overnight success, and she would smile and correct them every time, without exception. There was nothing overnight about it, she'd say. It took 11 years and a lot of nights I didn't think I'd survive. But success, she discovered, doesn't erase memory. It only gives memory somewhere quiet to surface. Late at night, alone in an apartment far nicer than anything she grew up in, she still sometimes heard that door closing behind her at 16. Then came the phone call. It was Mom Ngozi, the old neighbor, tracking her down through a mutual contact after seeing her in a magazine. "Adaeze, my dear," the old woman said, her voice trembling, "your father is very sick. The doctors are saying his heart is failing. Florence has spent everything they had on hospital bills, and now there's nothing left. He keeps asking for you. He says your name in his sleep." Adaeze sat with the phone pressed to her ear for a long moment, saying nothing. 11 years of silence rushed back at once, the locked gate, the nylon bag on the floor, the father who chose peace with his new wife over justice for his own child. "Send me the hospital's address," she finally said. She didn't decide to forgive him that day. She only decided to see him. Which brings us back to that black Range Rover pulling through the gate of the house that once threw her out with nothing. Except she hadn't come from the hospital directly. She had come to the house first, because Florence had answered her call, weeping, admitting everything, how her father had regretted the decision for years but was too proud and too broken to reach out, how the guilt had eaten at him quietly the way rust eats iron. Unseen until the structure finally gives way. Daniel stepped out onto the porch that afternoon, thinner than she remembered, older than his years, gripping the door frame like it was the only thing holding him upright. "Adaeze," he said again, disbelief written across every line of his face. "I didn't think you would come." "I almost didn't," she admitted. Florence stood a few steps behind him, eyes red, hands twisting together. "I said terrible things to you," she said quietly. "I told myself it wasn't my fault, that you were already troubled before I arrived. That was a lie I told myself so I could sleep at night." Adaeze looked at her father. "Why didn't you stop her? Just once. That's all I ever wanted. Not gifts. Not money. Just for you to stop her one time." Daniel's shoulders shook. "I was a coward," he said, voice breaking. "I told myself keeping peace at home mattered more than defending you, and I was wrong. I have regretted it every single day since you walked through that gate. I searched for you for years, Adaeze. I just didn't know how to face you once I found out you were alive and well without needing me at all. I needed you," she said softly. "For a long time, I needed you. Then one day, I stopped needing you and started needing peace instead." Silence stretched between them, heavy but no longer hostile. "I'm not here to punish you," she finally said. "I'm here because a woman I still think of as a mother figure told me you might not have much time left, and I refuse to let you die thinking I hated you." "Do you?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "Hate me?" She considered the question honestly, the way she considered everything now. "I did," she said. "For years. But hate is heavy, and I had a business to build. I put it down somewhere along the way and never picked it back up." Daniel wept openly then, the kind of crying a proud man only allows himself once in a lifetime. Florence wept beside him, her earlier bitterness replaced by something closer to shame and relief combined. "I cannot change yesterday," Adaeze said, her voice steady despite the tears now sliding down her own face. "But I refuse to let yesterday steal tomorrow. Not yours. Not mine." She paid off the hospital bills that same week, quietly, without making it a headline the way the reporters would have loved. She visited her father through his recovery, slowly rebuilding something that could never be the relationship they lost, but could still be something honest. More than that, she turned her pain into purpose. Adaeze's table expanded into a training program for young women who had been thrown away by their own families the way she once was, teaching them baking, business, and most importantly, that being unwanted by one household did not mean being unworthy in the world. Many of them went on to open their own kiosks, their own small dreams, carrying her lessons forward the way Mr. Ease's lessons had once carried her. The street where she grew up never forgot the day the Black Range Rover rolled through that gate. But what they remembered even more was what happened after, not a daughter arriving for revenge, but a woman strong enough to offer forgiveness to the people who least expected to deserve it, and wise enough to know that peace, unlike anger, was a gift she was finally ready to keep for herself. Sometimes, she told a room full of young women during one of her training sessions months later, the people who close the door on you become the reason you learn to build your own house. Your past may explain where you started. It never gets to decide where you end.